I thought I'd come here and first maybe talk a little bit about who I am, and because some of you might not play golf, and maybe just kind of build a little platform so you know where hopefully you know where I'm going and where I come from. So I'm originally from Sweden, Stockholm. I don't know how many of you have been there, but it's a country probably mostly known for ABBA, maybe for I don't have any dancing moves, anything like that, but maybe Swedish meatballs. The biggest sports we have is soccer and ice hockey. So I grew up in a country where sports are, a big part of the culture. My parents, however, was very interested in other sports. Golf was mainly the sport that they were interested in. As a matter of fact, my mom, she credits my success because she was pregnant with me when she started to play. So I thank her for the rhythm that I got early. So introduced to all kinds of sports. I actually competed in tennis. I don't know how many tennis players we have here, but it's a wonderful sport. I competed for 8 years. I started when I was 5. My role model was Björn Borg, and just wanted to be just like him. The whole country would stop when he played. But realized pretty quickly that my backhand was not as strong as it should be to get anywhere. And it seemed like my opponents noticed it quicker than I did because I kept running over on the side and eventually just could never get to the right side. But it certainly set me up for, all the things that I needed later in my life, practice and learn how to set goals and just really be focused what I wanted to do. So at the age of 16, I told my dad, I said, you know what, tennis is fun, soccer is fun, volleyball is fun, but I really want to play golf. And he said, that's fine. My parents played, and so to have their daughter and their other daughter play was not a, it was probably just a good thing. I was going to school. In Sweden, the school system is a little different. We don't have the luxury of having maybe, you go to school and then you have a high school team or college team. So I went to school, and then I went to this golf club that we belonged to. I played in the afternoon. But, coming from Sweden, you can just imagine the season is not very long. Some people say if you blink, you missed it. I think it's a little longer than that, but you find ways to practice. Luckily, my parents have a big basement. My dad put down a net and a mat, and I'll be hitting about maybe 25 yards. Not very far, but it was far enough for me to get a feel for how I would hit the shot. It was also a good time to put up some cameras and film a little bit more my technique. So I practiced a lot of my technique training in the winter. And then when the snow would melt, I go out, and you can just imagine how excited I was then, 6 months later, to go out and really see if my 20-yard shot were, if they were pretty good or if they were not very good. So, I would say that I was pretty dedicated to my sport early. I loved the competing aspect of it. I loved the training. The difference from golf and tennis, well, obviously I didn't have to have my poor backhand. In golf, I can just work on my strengths and play to my strength, even though obviously we get better working on the weaknesses, but I could still, manage to play. But one of the things that kind of haunted me early, and it's not haunting me today, but it's still kind of part of who I am, is I was very shy growing up. I was afraid to raise my hand in school and answer a question. A lot of times my grades was reflecting on that, and my mom would always say, well, Annika, how are things going in school? And I said, well, it's going pretty well. She said, well, maybe your grades are not the best. What can we do? And I was always afraid. I said, I don't want to communicate. I'm afraid somebody's going to laugh at me. And so there's something I always had to deal with, and it actually ended up being the same thing on the golf course early on. I was playing as an amateur, and I would come down the stretch in a tournament. I don't know how many golfers you have here, so I'm trying to use my language properly. Down the stretch means you only have a few left. Not this type of stretch. So I'm coming down there, and I see I'm doing quite well. And when you win a tournament, you have to give a winning speech. And you can just imagine how I would feel about that. So I would make a little mistake on purpose, a 3-putt or maybe a chip and a putt, and a poor tee shot. So it reflected in my score, but you really couldn't see it was on purpose. Well, it kept happening, and for me it was fine. I got to go on stage, I got a prize, and I didn't have to give the winning speech. But we would drive home, and my mom and my dad would, they were like, how do you feel about your game? And I would always tell them, and I think that they saw that there was a pattern going on. So the next tournament they called up, and they called the tournament director, and I'm not really sure what they said, but I know what the outcome was. They have made up a plan that everybody had to give a winning speech. So I go to the next tournament, and coming down the stretch, I'm playing well, and then making some mistakes, and then, you know, finish third, get a nice little trophy, and then they said, Annika, we want you to say something. No, I didn't win. We know you didn't win, but we want you to say something. And I got terrified. I was just shaking and didn't know what to say, and not really sure what I said, other than I normally love to do my clubs do the talking, so, you know, thank you very much for a wonderful tournament. And that was probably all I could say. I'm sure you're very used to setting the bar high. So I'm sure I'm talking to a crowd that's very familiar with that, but I've always had the vision that you should be able to birdie every hole. And the reason why I think so is because if you play one golf course over and over again, I believe you can birdie every hole. So why can't you do it in one day? Because there's no such thing as a non-birdie hole. So I've always felt like that's something I can do. So March 16, 2001, I'm playing in Phoenix, and I'm just having a good day. Hitting every fairway, hitting every green, making putts. I mean, the cup was probably this big. And it was just one of those rounds where it was just, like I said, going my way. Coming down the stretch, again, the last few holes, I know that if I par the last hole, I'm going to be the first woman to shoot 59. And I remember the putt, you know, being probably 3 feet, but when you look on TV, it's a little shorter, but it felt very, very long. And I had all these thoughts going through my mind, but I just keep telling myself, this is just another putt. I probably hit thousands of putts just this year. So I went over there and just took my line and committed to the line and made a good stroke, and it went in. And from that day, I realized that, you know, really, if you set up a vision, there are ways to get there. You know, so far, no other woman golfer has done that, but they've been very, very close. And if you look at the men's tour, more and more have done it. So I really think that it's almost, you know, setting a vision, believing in your mind, it's going to be easier for you to do it. So having said that, in 2003, I got an invite to play with the men. And no other woman had done that in 58 years. So the question was, well, why do you want to do it if nobody really has done it? And I felt, you know, this is a wonderful opportunity for me to just learn about myself, to test myself against the best golfers in the world. The women I was playing against, I mean, they're terrific. But I wanted something to maybe challenge me one time so I can take that knowledge back to the LPGA and really push all of us women to another level. And I remember saying yes at a press conference, and really didn't think more of it until I got these invites, and I said, whoa, this is really going to happen. I better pick a good place where I can play well. So this was in January, and I decided to join this tournament at Dallas. It's called, well, at the time it was Bank of America Colonial, and I had 4 months to get ready. I mean, I was playing pretty good at the time, so I felt like I just want to make sure that I peak at the right time. So I started going to the gym a little longer and starting to push myself a little bit more. I started to play further back from the men's tee, so I would get used to having longer clubs into the greens, and just thinking a little differently. If you want to achieve something in your life, don't be afraid, give it a try. What's the worst thing can happen? I missed a cut, I got home. But you know what? I was so exhausted that it didn't matter. It was, for me, it was about the experience. And this was in 2003. And a few years kind of went on. I played some good golf. I really achieved all my goals, if not more. Honestly, when I joined the tour, I didn't think I could win a single tournament. And then I stepped away and I had won a few more than that. And, you know, it's just funny. I looked at my career, and people say, well, how in the world can you step away when you're at your peak? I said, because I'm at my peak. I've climbed to the top. This is not the only top out there. This is just one top out of many. You know, this is my Mount Everest. But I can see there are some other mountains. And I was going to get married. I wanted to start a family. I had a passion for the game. I want to teach others. I have a passion for kids and nutrition and fitness. I have all these passions. I said, if I continue to play, because I'm one of those that give 100%. If I can't give 100, I don't want to do it. So I need, now when I've achieved this, I want to climb these other mountains. When I explain that to people, they look at me and, you know, they say, wow, I didn't know so many other things you wanted to do. I said, well, I didn't either, because golf was it. But once you get off this mountain, you realize, whoa, there are a lot of mountains, a lot of things I want to do. And lucky, I feel very fortunate. I'm climbing some of these mountains now. I haven't reached the top, but I'm on my journey up to some of them. I can tell you that, you know, I got married and I got 2 little ones. And to me, I tell everybody, they're my grand slam of life. You know, one thing is to have a 3-footer and trying to hit a good drive down the fairway, but there's nothing like holding your little ones and the satisfaction that I felt from them compared to on the golf course. And maybe it's easy to say, you've had a career, so it's easy, but I do think that we all pave our own ways. The decision we make every day is where you are today. So doesn't mean things have come easy. I told you I was very shy. I don't really like giving speeches and you know, being in front of the camera. But I had to deal with that because I had such a strong competitive drive that I didn't want that to prevent me from reaching my goals. So in 2008, I actually got a call from the University of Arizona. They asked me if I wanted to give the commencement speech. And no, I didn't really want to do that. But I didn't say no. I said, can you just give me some details? And then I thought about it, and it was just one of these moments when you can say, no, I don't want to do that, and you know, then you're done with it. But to me, that was a big challenge. And remember I said earlier, you got to face your fear. So I said, this is a fear of mine. I better call up and tell them I'm going to do it. So I had about 6 months to work on this speech, which is plenty. I can probably write a word a day and be fine. So I worked very hard on this speech because for me, yes, it was important to deliver the right message to these young, you know, graduates, but also for me to be able to overcome my fear and just learning how to get better. So I went to university and, you know, I stood, you know, it was maybe a little big area than this, and I developed or gave them my speech, and it was okay. You know, I was actually very proud of what I did, and I don't think anybody in that room had any idea how nervous I was and that this was a big deal for me. And, you know, I remember, you know, sitting on the plane home, and this time I wasn't in the bathroom. I was feeling quite fine this time. But I was sitting there, and I just thought to myself, you know, I'm so glad I did it. You know, hopefully I inspired 1 or 2 of these kids, but most of all for me, that I was able to just embrace something and face something that I've dealt with all my life. So again, it goes back to opportunities we have in life, whether it's golf, whether it's, you know, business, family, friends, you know, just decisions we are faced with every day. When you look at them, and maybe it's someday when you address something that's challenging and you succeed, I don't know about you, but I think it's a pretty cool feeling. And then you realize, you know what, it's not that tough if you put your mindset to it and just really, you know, do your best.